Happy Thursday, everyone. Don't usually see everyone on Thursdays. Welcome to the first Thursday evening show. Joining me, finally, we've been trying to do this for quite some time. Guest Sia Nejad from Sportsline and By the Book, correct?
Yes. That's right. By the Book with Monumental Sports Network.
Yes.
Stephie, can I just say, thank you for opening up Thursdays, because you know my schedule is tough with when you normally do this show. And I felt like, okay, she's opening Thursdays just for me. Like, that's how much of a narcissist I am. I'm like, yeah, this is definitely like a Sia thing. And now I get to come on your show. Pretty cool.
Oh, it's 100% because I needed to get you on. We tried to make it happen. Didn't happen. I'm like, that's it. I got to open my Thursday nights. I got to bring them on. And shockingly for most people, I think, because we met via online, more in the golf space, I believe.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk to NFL tonight. Not to surprise everyone, we're talking about football.
I love that. I mean, here's the thing. I try to cover all sports. Like, I do a lot of hosting, but I'm an analyst too for like pretty much everything. And I'll say this, like, my two main sports that I like really kind of dive deep on are PGA and NFL. So it's kind of like the perfect marriage where if we're not going to be talking golf, like NFL would be my next go-to. Now I'll concede, Stephie, it's May 23rd. We're like just over 100 days away from actually like consuming actual football. But, you know, I tend to think I'm up to speed on some things. I've made a couple of bets here and there. So you don't make those bets without information, or at least without prognostication. So you can talk anything you want.
Absolutely. And we have that in common because I basically go NFL PGA. You might be PGA NFL, but that's what the two of us do. So we're going to talk some win totals. We're going to talk some NFL futures. I never think it's too early. And I think you can find some value this early on. There will be some lines I'm like, maybe we'll wait a little bit, see how the season goes, and then see how we can attack it. First of all, who's your NFL team?
So I don't know if you can see what's going on behind me, but over my right shoulder is Santana Moss, and he's holding up the 21 for Sean Taylor, my favorite football player of all time, who of course tragically passed away in 2007. But I've been a lifelong Commanders fan, and I'm old enough to have known the Commanders before they were the Commanders and when they were like racking up wins and Super Bowls and things like that. So, I mean, granted, I was young back then, but like we haven't been good for like 30 years. So the fact that vibes are even remotely high right now is a pretty good thing for me.
And I don't do this on purpose, but somehow I feel like I do bring on a lot of guests that are also in the NFC East. Happens on accident. We'll make for some good conversation. We'll jump right into these win totals. I'll stop yapping a little bit. I want to start with the teams that have a rookie QB. Okay. Looking at Chicago, New England, Minnesota, Washington. Well, your Washington Commanders, honestly. What stands out to you?
Well, I'll say this, like, I'm not a big Caleb Williams guy. But with that said, he's got such a good surrounding cast. And I'm not even talking about the receivers that they brought in. I mean, like, let's see what happens with the offensive line, but the defense is stacked. Like, I don't know if people remember, the Bears were winning games last year, and no offense to Justin Fields, but a lot of that was predicated on the defense just being so good, whether it was Jalen Johnson in the back end or Montez Sweat from the Commanders who came over in the middle of the season. This defense like has such like moxie. It has such personality and attitude. I think that's worth a ton. So you add Caleb Williams to the mix, who's probably a better quarterback than Justin Fields, although I'm not necessarily willing to say he's what other people say he is. But Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, I mean, they've got the dudes now. Of course, they've got the rookie from Washington, who I'm somehow forgetting his name.
Rome Odunze.
Oh, Rome Odunze, of course. So yeah, I mean, the supporting cast is there. So I think the Bears have a shot to be pretty good. Now they're in a really tough division because I think the Packers are really good. I think the Packers should have beat the San Francisco 49ers last year in the playoffs. And by the way, I think the Detroit Lions, I think we all know they should have beaten the 49ers last year in the playoffs. They were up, 24-3 at halftime, something crazy. Yeah. So I think it's sort of bad timing for the Bears to be good for Bears fans, but I think they're going to be a reasonably good team. And I think if they can kind of keep this core over the next 3 or 4 years, they're going to be solid. As far as their win total, I think it's 8.5.
Yeah, it's sitting there 8.5.
Yeah, I have a lot of takes, but that one is like kind of a stay away for me. I think I would lean to the over, but you know, their schedule isn't, I'll check my notes on their schedule, but like the NFC North is tough. Like they're going to have even Minnesota is going to be tough in my opinion. So I would probably stay away from that one, but my lean would be to the over.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's been a while since we're like, oh yeah, the NFC North is tough. Like imagine saying that. It's been so long, especially you lose Aaron Rodgers, then you lose Kirk Cousins. No matter what your opinion is on him, Chicago has not been a dominant team for. I mean, geez, we won't go back to the last year that they were a considered dominant team. And I think you brought up a good point, which everyone's forgetting about. Their defense was really tough, especially that back end of last year. But looking at being a top 10 D, there was kind of a little life brought into that pass rush when they brought on Sweat. And then you mentioned it with the receiving core. So I'm actually with you where I'm staying away from this right now. I think this is one of those numbers. Let's wait. I don't know. They lose a couple games. You have to see how it plays out. You brought the Vikings. I'm glad you did because I feel kind of strongly about this, but I realize I'm in there's not a lot of people that agree with me. So Minnesota's win total is sitting at 6.5.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be as bad as everyone is anticipating because of the rest of the team. I mean, you saw them win 7 games last year. They had Kirk for about 8, and they had a really shitty start, if we're going to be completely honest.
Yeah,
and then you
big
had
time.
Dobbs for 4, Jaron Hall for 3 drives. Then you had, Nick Mullins the rest of the time. Their schedule is pretty hard on paper. They've got an improved division. I get it. It's been a really long time since they won less than 7 games. It was 2019.
Yeah.
I bet this a while ago. I bet it when the line came out. I know it shifted a little bit, but I just can't get there on being super down on Minnesota yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, their total, correct me if I'm wrong, you might have just said this. I think it's in that 6.5 range.
Yeah.
Which is pretty low. I mean, this is a 17-game season now. It's pretty low. But when you see what they're stacked up against, I mean, in terms of their division, they're clearly, I shouldn't say clearly. They're clearly in the bottom 2 of that division. I mean, Detroit and Green Bay, I think, are really, really good. Super Bowl viable, good. Bears clearly much improved. So I think they're the 4th best. And here's the thing. A lot of this comes out, same with your New York Giants. A lot of this comes down to the quarterback position. And I don't know how good JJ McCarthy is. And I know we have a lot of people who say he's really, really good. Very small sample size in terms of the number of actual throws we saw from him at Michigan. I mean, he was kind of it felt like he was being hidden the whole time. But with all that said, I don't have a super strong take one way or the other. I think he's a little overrated, a little overdrafted. But if he's not very good, or if in his first year he's not very good and they have to roll out Sam Darnold or they roll out McCarthy and McCarthy's just going to have some growing pains, this could you listen, Stephie, you know this. I know this as Commanders and Giants fans. If you don't have the quarterback position solved and you're in a tough division, good luck week to week.
Yeah. And I think my only pushback is I think Kevin O'Connell makes it really easy for quarterbacks.
That's true.
I think he sets them up. And then you look at all the weapons. It's really hard to have the best, who I think is the best wide receiver in the NFL. And, he gives you at least 4 or 5 games, I think, maybe a little bit more than that. I think Sam Darnold starts though. So I did bet this when it opened up. You see the other teams are sitting at 6.5. And I'm like, Brian Flores did make that defense do something. It wasn't great. I think they drafted Dallas Turner, what was that, 17th overall. I think it's a perfect fit for him. Will I be shocked if they win 6 games? No. But I think that getting over that hump isn't asking too much.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you there. I don't disagree.
Yeah. We'll talk about your Commanders, actually. So they're sitting at 6.5 as well. Minus 110. Where are you at with this team?
Well, I'll say this. It's minus 110 some places. It's minus 130 to the over in other places. And I just looked on DraftKings, it's minus 120. So I do think there's some momentum, and this could be just a vibes thing. People see there's been so much turnover in the front office in a really good way. We've got clearly the right pieces in place in terms of those that are making the decisions. They had a ton of draft picks. Their offseason was pretty good from a free agency standpoint. I mean, some of these guys are more locker room guys than anything. I'm not saying Bobby Wagner and Austin Eckler aren't super talented, but I mean, they don't have a long-term viability on this team. But I do think those guys are important because of what their impact is going to be on the team. Prior to them, it was Terry McLaurin giving all the rah-rah speeches after and before games. I do think this locker room is going to be really kind of close-knit. And again, this comes down to Jaden Daniels. My thing about Jaden Daniels is if they leave him out on an island to get hurt, like we got serious problems.
Yeah.
I love Jaden Daniels' ball. And you mentioned the show By the Book, one of the shows I do. I have a co-host there, Meg McDonald, and I was telling her all college football season. Not that I'm like the scout guru, but everybody was talking about Caleb Williams. And this is, again, months before the draft. I said, I watched Jaden Daniels throw the ball. Forget about his running ability. I watched this guy throw the ball and just drop a dime like 50 yards down the field, like completely effortless. I'm like, this is the best quarterback in college football. So fast forward 4 or 5 months to the NFL draft, and it seems pretty clear Washington's going to get him. I think this guy I actually think he's the best quarterback in the draft. That's just my opinion. If he stays healthy, this team, in my opinion, sails over 6.5 wins. They still have a ton of holes on the defense, on the interior, you name it. But I think they're good enough, especially with the NFC East taking a little bit of a step back.
Yes.
I think the Eagles are good. I think they're like, people are a little bit more down on the Eagles than they should be, but they're not great, in my opinion. Dallas, sorry. Like, I'm not sold on Dallas. I'm usually not sold on Dallas. I'm usually right on that. And then we don't know what we're getting from the Giants, but in all likelihood, I mean, they're in terms of odds, like they're below Washington. So that kind of tells a story about the Giants that maybe they're not going to be so good either. So I think Washington can grab some wins in the division, and they don't have a super hard schedule because of where they finished in the division. So they're getting some of those extra games, those 3 extra games that each team gets. You know, they're getting not layups, but easier games than most teams. So I think they're set up to get 7 or 8 wins for sure.
Sia, you want to know what my one problem is with Washington? And I'm obviously an NFC East fan, so I don't care. You guys are good. I don't care. Like, I would rather you be bad than good, but I do like to see teams have a little bit of a resurgence. I also miss when the NFC East was actually competitive. Like, we haven't seen that in a while. It hasn't been competitive. You brought in our O-line coach, Bobby Johnson, after having a really bad O-line year. And I struggle. I think I don't have a super strong stance on this, only because I could see them landing on that. Like, the over is probably the right move. 7 wins isn't a lot, especially in the NFC. Yeah. But I struggle with that O-line, especially with Daniels. That's my big negative there.
It's a huge negative. And here's the thing. It's kind of like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, because he's going to need to scramble around a little bit. He's going to need to use his legs because he's going to have to break the pocket a lot. But I think he's going to, like, what I don't want him to do is break the pocket and run every time. I love quarterbacks that can break the pocket just so that they can buy time for their receivers. And in a Kingsbury offense, like, I don't know how well that's going to go necessarily, but if we can get Jaden Daniels behind a bad offensive line, but if he's going to be mobile and buy a few extra seconds, then I think we're going to be in a spot where we're going to see him make some really big plays, hopefully not with his legs, but with his arm. As far as the offensive line's a problem for Washington, like, no question about it. And your offensive line coach, it's one of those things where the Giants, and I'm just going back like 2 years here, feel like they've had the worst offensive line luck, like, of all time. So I don't know how much to attribute to the offensive line or the coaching staff in general, and just like crazy bad luck. And, oh, by the way, a quarterback that might not be helping his offensive line out. So, like, I can't really, like, quantify whether this guy is good or bad.
Right. And I attribute a lot of the O-line issues for the Giants actually to the coaching staff. You have Mark Colombo. It's kind of the same deal. They just don't know how to hire the right guy in there. Bobby Johnson is definitely not my favorite coach in the league. He's not my least favorite coach. That would be Mark Colombo, who is no longer an NFL coach. But outside of Washington, looking at New England or Denver, do you have a strong stance on either of those teams before we kind of move on?
Yeah, the Denver thing, I almost feel bad because for, like, Sean Payton, because like, he really wanted a quarterback. And I'm not saying the quarterback he drafted isn't good, but you had to think Sean Payton thought, because I think Michael Penix is a good quarterback, for example. Like, you had to think going into the draft, maybe not the day of the draft, but going into the draft like a month out, he was going to have like 2 or 3 quarterbacks at his disposal, like a JJ McCarthy or, a Penix or what have you. And so he unfortunately ended up, like, I don't know that this would have been his pick, right? Like, I think he got kind of like the last guy he could have drafted in that spot that he thought that was going to be available to him. So I don't think it's going to be a good season for Denver. I don't think it's going to be a good season for New England. And it's a quarterback thing. It's a personnel thing. And it's like, you always have to measure what the improvements are for each team against the improvements for every other team. And when we look at some of the teams we're talking about in terms of what they did in free agency and what they did in the draft, and then you compare that to the alleged improvements that Denver made, whether it's at quarterback or otherwise, or New England, I'm just not really inspired by any of that. And their win totals reflect that. Don't get me wrong. But if I'm making a jump on any of these win totals, I think the one with the Patriots is interesting because, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 4.5. And that's such a low total that, like, maybe they'll surprise us. Maybe Drake May will be better than we think. And they have Jacoby Brissett there, who's probably going to start the season anyway. So I would probably take the over with New England, but I wouldn't actually.
Yeah. And I think I'm with you on that. And I think part of that just comes from like their defense. We saw it last year, saved their ass quite a bit. We saw them start winning some games. I mean, their offense is very bottom barrel, but, and you know, their division's tough, but did the Bills get a little bit weaker? Or like, we'll see what that looks like. So I think I'm with you there on the over. As far as Denver goes, roster stinks. I'm not a Sean Payton fan. Nix is very much one of his guys. He loves these big-handed type recruits, so it doesn't shock me there. And they kind of parted ways with all these vets that don't totally make sense. I don't know what cornerstone piece they really have in their defense other than Surtain. So I'm a little bit out entirely on Denver. I have been for quite a bit since they went and tried to get Russell. Also not a Russell fan, but everyone that watches the show is very aware of that. We'll talk about the NFC East a little bit because I think Philly and Dallas are two teams going back and forth, you know, this overrated, underrated type ordeal. The NFC East, you know very well, has not repeated a winner in 10 years. That was like the McNabb, Reed type era. What was that, 2004? So the Cowboys won last year. I'm already knocking them off. Like at this point, I'm kind of like outside of my feelings on Dallas, which are not strong. And I'm going to sound like a hater, which is great. We'll talk about Dallas quick. So Dallas their win total is at 10.5. The over is actually plus 126 on Bet Rivers, plus 115 on DraftKings. Where are you at Dallas wise?
I would probably lean to where the money is right now, to the under. I think 10 wins is very realistic for Dallas.
Yeah.
You know, again, 17-game season. They get the Giants twice. They get the Commanders twice. The Eagles twice. I mean, even though I think the Eagles are better, like we're probably talking about a split with the Eagles. We're probably talking about, you know, beating either Washington or the Giants twice and maybe splitting with the other team. So you got a handful of wins kind of right off the bat there. Schedule not, from what I recall, not particularly hard, not particularly easy, kind of in the middle of the pack. I think I would lean to the under there. There's no way in it. I just don't like this roster. I really just don't like this roster. I think Dak is fine. The receiving core is pretty solid. I don't know what they're doing at running back exactly. I don't know. I think 10 wins or 9 wins is probably where I'm at, which is probably why the juice is shaded to the under.
Yeah, I didn't love. I mean, the roster was also like solid last year. Fine. There was things to not love. You look at their O-line right now, huge question marks. Obviously, they have CeeDee Lamb. But behind that, they have Cooks and Tolbert, and then they let Pollard go, and is Zeke their RB1? And I don't think a lot of people realize how much the Cowboys have relied on their running game. It's been like such a staple of that offense for quite a long time. And sadly, I think that actually I don't give it. I do not care. I'm excited for this new Dallas era. We'll see how it goes. All good things have to come to an end though. And they won 12 games the last 3 years. Everyone that watches the show knows, like I love to break, you know, these trends here. And they have 4 years straight prior under 10. Mike Zimmer, I always said he'd be better, you know, in a non-head coach role. I think I'm waiting to bet this only because they open up against the Browns. Then they have the Saints, Ravens, Giants. Do they win 3 of those games and then this goes up? I don't know.
I love that strategy, by the way, especially when you're talking about like division winners, because we've got like the Eagles at like plus 115, Dallas behind them, not too far behind them, but like these can change rapidly after the first few games. And if you think you have a team that you want to fade that has an easy, maybe first 4 or 5 games, then go ahead and wait, because those odds are obviously going to shift. I mean, it's part of the reason I like the Jets, I'm just, this is an example.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to switch the subject.
No, well,
I
let's
like
talk about the Jets. I would love to.
I like them to win the AFC East. I've been saying that when
Mhm.
it was like a month ago. I put this all over Twitter. They were plus 240 at the time. They're plus 190, plus 200 now. But they have a hard first game. They play at San Francisco, I think,
Yeah.
Monday Night Football. But I'm still willing to take them. I was still willing to take them at plus 240 then. But if you want to wait and maybe wait till after they lose to San Francisco, if that's what you think is going to happen, I think they've got potential to actually win that game. And I love the San Francisco 49ers. It's a 6-point spread. I'm taking the Jets in that one for sure, but I think they have outright win potential there. But the long and short of it is their next 4 games are relatively easy. If you package those 4 together, like, they could rattle off some wins. So you may as well get on the Jets early, unless you want to wait until after game 1 and see if the 49ers win. And maybe that number gets a little different. Probably won't get much different, but that the Jets are a good example of like the opposite of what you're talking about with the Cowboys. Like, if you're trying to take the Eagles, maybe you wait for the Cowboys to have a good start, and then you take the Eagles instead of at plus 115, you take them at plus 145 or whatever the number might be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, do you have any concern with, and I'm not usually someone that, typically worries about this stuff, and I will be betting probably, I don't know what the line is yet week 1, but we won't dive into that already. We'll save that for next week. No, but Aaron Rodgers is definitely old. Their
Yes.
O-line still concerns me despite the additions. I think I would rather go a direction like division with the Jets than win total. It feels safer. It feels like you're getting a better number. I know it's only sitting at 9.5. I know that Aaron Rodgers is going to come out with a vengeance. Like, I know we're going to get, I don't believe that, Aaron Rodgers lost a step. I'm sure that he is going to be the Aaron Rodgers that we all love to watch. But I think the way to go with the Jets is maybe division versus win total.
I agree, especially since it's set at 9.5 in a lot of places, and it's like minus 150 to the over. So, I mean, I'd probably just rather take the plus 200 if that's where it's at. It looks like Armand says it's plus 210 on FanDuel. I'd rather take the plus 210 that they're going to win the division, even though you obviously could have a situation where they get to 10 wins and the Miami Dolphins get to 11 wins. And so you lose that division bet, but you could have won the over 9.5 bet. And that's why, maybe you wait until after week 1 and hit a win total then, or a division play then. But yeah, I think you're right. I do like that play because it is still a competitive. We don't know exactly what we're getting from the Bills. We don't know exactly what we're getting from the Dolphins. But if Aaron Rodgers plays a majority of this season, I do think they win the division. And for the record, maybe he has lost a step, Stephie. Like, maybe he's not as good. But that's okay, because the improvement with an Aaron Rodgers who has lost a step, being old and coming off an Achilles, versus what they trotted out there last season, it's just such an incredible improvement regardless. And I think what I love about Rodgers so much is he's going to have Garrett Wilson. They drafted a guy. They brought in Mike Williams, but pre-snap, Aaron Rodgers has always been able to do the type of stuff that Tom Brady and Peyton Manning have done. So even if he's not like sauntering around the pocket and breaking the pocket and running around and getting first downs, he's going to be reading things and getting the ball out 3-step drops, 5-step drops pretty quickly. So I'm pretty confident that the Jets are going to have a great defense and a highly functioning offense relative to last year.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. I go back and forth. They share a stadium with my team, so I'm not always the most positive about them. Other than the teams we've talked about, is there a win total line that really stood out to you right when you first started looking?
Yeah, looking at some of my notes, I mean, I put the Commanders and Jets down on there. I think the Eagles is interesting over 10.5. I think the Colts are very interesting on a lot of levels because their number is 8.5. And it's plus money. It's plus 105. I mean, Houston is really good. Don't get me wrong. But I do think if Anthony Richardson, by the way, I think the Colts are live to win the division too. That's like plus 3 something. Okay. And I think, throwing it out there, I think Anthony Richardson, if he has a healthy season, is live to be an NFL MVP at like greater than 30-1. I throw that out there because I do think they have the makeup to stomp teams if Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor can stay healthy. Their offensive line is decent. Their defense probably needs a little bit of help, but don't forget what the formula was against the Texans in the playoffs. I don't know if you recall, like the Ravens embarrassed the Texans. It was like, it was like kind of funny if you didn't have money on the Texans because the Ravens were just running the ball. And I'm not calling Anthony Richardson Lamar Jackson, but I'm saying they're similar. And I'm not calling Jonathan Taylor whatever running back the Ravens were running out there, which was probably like Gus Edwards and a handful of other guys. But this is the formula to beat the Texans. This is the formula to win the division. If you've got a highly functioning Lamar Jackson type quarterback who really proved himself in the 4 games he threw himself out there, I think this team is a little underappreciated. They re-signed Michael Pittman. They've got their bevy of tight ends. Like they've got like 8 tight ends on the roster right now that they always throw to. I think this team is formidable.
Yeah, I think I agree with you in that. Obviously there's the concern with Anthony Richardson. He got hurt like 2 out of the 4 games he starts. It's obviously a red flag there. But I think all they really need to do to alleviate that is just rely more on Jonathan Taylor. Like I think it's kind of an easy fix. Houston's interesting. They're kind of the darling this year that everyone is you're either high on them or you're low on them. I am under the impression, I'm not buying the Stroud sophomore slump. And I'll say that I think it's just a lazy analysis.
I agree.
I think you look at even like the rest advantage that they have. They have a 4-game like rest advantage against all their opponents. They added Stephon Diggs, which is actually a luxury ad. If we're going to be completely honest, that was not a necessary ad by any means. You add Mixon, you add Danielle Hunter, who I'll do an award show. Maybe we'll talk awards next week, but don't sleep on him as Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's a really nice sleeper, especially at his odds. Rest of the division, again, like we said, it can be competitive and it also could very much just be the Texans again, in my opinion. I don't think 10 games is a lot. That's what they did last year. I think I would lean the over here. It might be another team that you want to wait, but I think CJ Stroud is that guy. I think they made some very nice draft picks. Think they made a lot of really good ads. I'm a huge Ryans girly. So I think Houston will be the real deal. So I tend to lean the over.
Yeah. And by the way, like I'll say this about the Colts. Part of the reason I like them so much is because, and part of the reason I like Anthony Richardson as a potential MVP and all of that, is because it's so long. Like I'm getting the Colts at plus 330. I'm interested in that if we see regression from the Houston Texans. So when it comes to the Texans, you're right. Like they look like they're a team. And for the record, that luxury ad with Stephon Diggs, I agree with you. Like it's not like Stephon Diggs is in his prime or anything, but if you want to protect against the sophomore slump, you just load up, right? I mean, obviously you can protect in a lot of different ways. You can have offensive line, good running back, whatever. And Joe Mixon, we could argue whether or not that was like a super impactful ad or not. But the bottom line is if Tank Dell is healthy and Nico Collins, and like you said, Stephon Diggs, those are the types. And by the way, the Dallas tight end that came over there last year, again, I'm forgetting another name.
Schultz.
Dalton Schultz, of course. You can see I'm in like golf and baseball mode.
No. I'm not in baseball, so you have one less than me. So
yeah, but like Dalton Schultz is no slouch at all. Like, so like they have like the cast to prevent a sophomore slump. And I love what you said about D'Amico Ryans, the offensive coordinator, this coaching staff. This is definitely a formidable team. No question about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually want to stay in this division before I ask you about another team that you're eyeing out.
Oh, I know what you're going to say. Wait, say it again.
Tennessee Titans.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with the Jaguars. I do want to say this,
but I know that you want to talk about them. So I'm going to go. Actually, I'll open the floor to Jaguars before I start wrapping up to let you get out of here because I've stolen so much of your time. But Tennessee Titans, I do want to get to. You talk about the Jaguars.
So Titans, by the way, I think are interesting. I don't think they're going to be very good, but I think they're interesting. I think we're going to see another step back from the Jaguars. And I said this from, by the way, I'm wrong about a lot of stuff too. So when I'm like, I said this about this person and I was right, just, trust me. Like I'm saying this because it's coming up in context. I never thought Trevor Lawrence was generational. I never thought he was going to be that good. And I got a lot of flack when he was coming out of Clemson, when I was saying that on shows like this and Sirius XM and what have you. I think he's a very average quarterback, and that's not a bad thing. That doesn't mean he's not talented, but I think he's a very average quarterback. I think this team takes another step back, which is part of the reason that I like the Colts as well, because I actually think this is a 2-horse race between the Colts and the Texans. I think the Titans are interesting. I don't think they can contend for the division. I hate that they got rid of their coach. I thought that was kind of part of their identity. Derrick Henry moving on. I kind of get that. But you talked to me about the Titans, but I think the Jags, I would take their under win total, by the way.
For the Jags, you'll take the under?
For the Jags, yeah.
I think I'm there too with you. I think, you've got Lawrence kind of coming up on this looming contract that's going to have to be in the picture at some point. They lost Ridley, and they're like, all right, we'll add Gabe Davis, we'll draft Brian Thompson Jr., who could very well end up being a fantastic piece. They still have Evan Ingram. I get it. Their O-line was not very good. Running back room, not very good. Definitely worse than the expectations were last season. Yeah. Is Armstead really enough for the D to improve? I don't know how I feel about that. I'm more interested in betting the Titans for one reason. I gave this out. I mean, whenever the lines came out, I gave it out over the 5.5. It's up to 6.5. It's at plus 123, depending where you are betting. I probably would consider taking that. Only because this team has just made sure like Will Levis doesn't get an excuse. So you've got their wide receiver room is Hopkins, Ridley, Boyd, and you still have Treylon Burks there. You brought in Pollard. You've got Spears, who showed a lot of promise. I think, it was overshadowed a little bit by Henry, but you bring Latham in. He'll probably be your left. He'll be your left tackle after, who'd they lose? Andre Dillard, who was absolutely a liability last year. So I think the Titans can be fine. Like, I liked my number better at the 5.5. Like, do they land on 6 games? Probably. Is the over 6.5 maybe worth a sprinkle? Is this division maybe way more fun than I think people are realizing? I lean yes.
I feel like the Titans have a lot of guys. If we're talking about like skill positions, I feel like they put a roster together that like was going to be awesome 3 years ago. And with like a kind of like a new quarterback, Will Levis, who frankly,
I don't like at all.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be like a guy that's going to be starting for any NFL team for more than a couple of years in a row. Like, I think he's, a consummate backup, and that's what his career is probably going to be. I hope I'm wrong. I mean, he's got moxie. I like watching him play, but I just like, there's just too many holes in this team for me to be like, they're going to win 7 or 8 games.
Yeah. I think 6 is the lucky number. Like, if anyone would like to bet me uncut on the exact 6, if you want to take the over, I will absolutely bet you on that. Is there another team that you want to chit chat about before I start letting you get out of here again?
Let's see. I mentioned, the Falcons. The NFC South looks like, so here's the thing about the Falcons. A lot of times when a team gets a new coach or a new quarterback or a new shiny object, or all of a sudden their receiver pieces are going to succeed because they finally did get a quarterback, those are all the narratives about the Falcons. And of course, they have like an all-star running back too.
Yeah.
I feel like that lends itself to people being like overrated. Like it's almost like a snap response. Like, oh, you think they're going to be really good? All of a sudden, no, overrated. I think them to win their division, the Falcons to win their division at minus 105 is a pretty great number, because I just don't think there's any teams in the NFC South that can compete with a Falcons team that was pretty competitive last year for the most part, that adds Kirk Cousins. And if you don't think Kirk Cousins is a great quarterback, that's fine. But the question isn't whether he's a great quarterback. It's how much better is he than Desmond Ridder and whoever else they were trotting out, Taylor Heineke last year. Yeah. And the answer to that is like, it's a very formidable difference. I look at the Bucs. I look at the Saints. I look at the NFC South in general, the Panthers, and I'm like, okay, which one of these teams is going to surprise me and take out my minus 105 on the Falcons to win the NFC South?
Yeah, I think the only one that would lay any concern is maybe the Bucs, but right. Again, we've seen this story a million times. Like, I'm happy for Baker. I love the Baker resurgence. And everyone, again, listeners of the show know I was on Tampa Bay's under. I was wrong. Like, I really did not think that season was going to go the way that it did. And I lean towards it won't go that way. Could they also end up in the playoffs again just because of the NFC and how weak it is? Maybe. But I think this is the Falcons' division to lose. And you let the Falcons go in a couple, they win a couple games, and this number doesn't look like minus 105 anymore. So I think I agree with you there. I think Kirk Cousins is I actually don't think the general public realizes the gap between a Desmond Ridder and a Kirk Cousins. Right. Like, can Kirk Cousins, has Kirk Cousins proved under the bright lights in a playoff stage that he can win games? No, he hasn't. But has he proven to be I think a good quarterback? I'm a Kirk Cousins defender. I think that Atlanta defense is great. I think it was sneaky last year. And I think Kirk Cousins he kind of goes to, another team with all the weapons he kind of needs. You get rid of, this wart that you had in Arthur Smith. And I think this team could be very good next year.
Yeah, I'll say this too. What's really cool about the Falcons is as much as most people, I didn't hate it. Most people hated the Michael Penix pick. I really
Yeah.
like Michael Penix, by the way. You have an insurance policy for this pick. Forget about the actual team. Let's just talk betting for a second. If Michael Penix comes in week 6 because Kirk Cousins gets injured, he's a formidable quarterback. Like he's a big moment quarterback. He's a rookie. Don't get me wrong. He'll have his growing pains, but I wouldn't be super worried about my bet if all of a sudden Kirk Cousins goes down. They're 4-2 or they're 3-3. I'm not worried about my -105 division bet because I think Michael Penix can get up to speed. And by the way, he's got a lot of weapons and at least a couple great running backs. I think we have a little bit of an insurance policy with that number 8 pick overall.
Yeah, my hot take is that the Penix pick is not going to look very stupid in a couple of years. I think that we're going to look back. I get he's old and I was very against him going in the first round, and that's fine. It's not necessarily a luxury pick, but then you look at contract wise, what does that look like? Maybe it's not as silly as everyone is saying. I see Armand he was asking someone in the chat actually, who they like to win the AFC North. Do you have an opinion on that before we wrap it up?
Interesting. I mean, first of all, what's your take on the AFC North?
My take is the Steelers, I think, all good things have to come to an end. 17 straight winning seasons is insanity against everything that I go as far as trends are. I continue to bet this team over their win total. I think that their defense is always going to be productive. We know what the Steelers defense is. I like what they did with the draft, but the Steelers always have a good draft. I don't know how I feel about the Russell Justin. I don't know if that's going to go as well as everyone is anticipating.
Well, also, it's not like they surrounded those two with a bunch of receiver talent, right? Like Deontay Johnson is gone. You've got Pickens and just what feels like a bunch of guys. That's not very helpful to the new quarterback experience.
And they brought in Arthur Smith, who I'm not a fan of. I'm back on the Najee train. If we're talking fantasy, that can be a conversation for a later day. I think I'm in on this team as far as some fantasy positions go. I'm not ready to bet this team because I think that this is another one, get in on it during the season. I watched, the Giants win total. It was 6.5, whatever. It dropped after losing, what team is it? Before we played Washington, it dropped to 4.5. I hit the over. So I think they're a team that you can wait to lose a couple games and then take the over there. As far as winning this division,
I'll tell you, I have the Ravens plus 130 in my notes. That's what I'm going with. Obviously the Bengals are formidable. I'm going with the Ravens.
Yeah, I think I lean that way too. I know a lot of people are a little bit lower on them. I don't trust the Bengals still. I know everyone wants to get back behind them, but I'm not there right now. So I think I lean the Ravens at this time. The Browns, I'm sorry. I will not trust Watson until, you get a new quarterback. We can have a conversation maybe. I think the pieces are there. The defense is great, but I don't think they're ready to win this division, which is one of the best divisions in football.
Hey, Stephie, I've got 3 Super Bowl exacta bets that I will admit.
Let's hear it. I'm going to let you wrap it up. I'm going to let you leave the show on these.
Yeah. So I'll admit, I didn't spend a lot of time looking at this. I just wanted some fun long shot plays with some teams that I like. So what I mean by exactas for those that are listening, I'm picking the actual Super Bowl winner and who is going to lose to the Super Bowl winner. And I'll give you the odds as well, at least the odds that I saw. That it might be longer in other places. All right. Kansas City Chiefs. I'm going to give you 3. Actually, I'm going to give you 3. I'm going to start with the shortest odds.
Okay.
Chiefs over the Lions plus 4,500.
Okay.
All right. So that's number 1. Chiefs over the Packers plus 6,000. All right. 60 to 1.
You love the Packers, huh?
Yeah, here's the
I
thing.
learned something new about you tonight.
Yeah, I think that offense is extremely hard to stop. The
Yeah.
way that offense is, it doesn't matter who the receiver is. Like, it can be anybody. Like, they know how to Jordan Love knows how to distribute the ball. They're so hard to stop. I didn't like getting rid of Aaron Jones for Josh Jacobs, but that's another story. I think the NFC North winner, if it's not San Francisco, I think the NFC North winner is the representative for the Super Bowl in the NFC. So Chiefs over the Lions plus 4,500. The
Okay.
Chiefs over the Green Bay Packers plus 6,000. And I got to do a San Francisco one because they've been my Super Bowl pick the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Now, this is 80-1, folks. This is the one that's going to cash.
Alrighty.
And everybody's going to hate this. San Francisco 49ers at 80-1. They're your Super Bowl champion. But to cash that 80-1 ticket, they've got to beat Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. You're welcome, everybody. 80-1. Let's all cash that ticket in a few months.
Yeah, he's got to listen. Follow in Brady's footsteps. You didn't. I mean, you got hurt. It kind of was go to a Super Bowl, don't win. I don't hate that. I think the 80-1 is probably my favorite out of all of those. Has to be.
Here's the thing. The last comment I'll say about the Jets. Okay, so the defense had a little bit of turnover, but we know how good. We think we know this defense is good, but they're so much better than what we saw last year because the defense was constantly on the field. So now you put Aaron Rodgers on the field, you keep the defense off the field a little bit, you get an offense that can actually score a little bit of points, and then you get the defense well rested, very extremely formidable. I just think we're like underappreciating what Aaron Rodgers does for both sides of the ball.
Yeah. I'm just worried. He's old. Listen, and
he's old.
It's funny because every time you say he's old, like I'm also aging myself. And that's because I saw Aaron Rodgers get drafted. I went through the Aaron Rodgers. It's crazy that we're in a spot where he's playing on another team. It's crazy. He was gonna run with who the hell was he supposed to run with?
The Kennedy guy.
Oh my God. I can't. I try to block some of it out. But yeah, it's been crazy to see the progression of him, and it's going to be interesting to finally see him play more than one game.
Yeah, 4 snaps, I think it was.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
God,
crazy.
Horrible. Any last notes before I let you get out of here?
I don't think so. Thanks for having me on. Would love to come on again. I can talk football. I can talk PGA. Technically, I can talk everything, but sometimes not well.
Next time I get you on, we'll have to talk PGA. I will let you enjoy your Thursday evening. And guys, make sure you're following him. Go watch the shows. Very, very, very smart, very entertaining. Someone you should be following.
Well, thank you.
See ya.
See ya.
And now, it's been a while.
Hey.
Hello. It's been a while.
Yeah, we don't talk on camera anymore.
No, we don't. Everyone's probably worried. Maybe they think we had like a fight.
Falling out? No, we have not had a falling out.
We did not. If we ever have a falling out, I will remove my Biggie Buddha, and then you'll know.
All right, that'll be the sign. That'll be the sign.
Make sure you like, subscribe, review, do all the things if you're listening. Let's do a couple of questions. We haven't done listener questions in a minute.
Let's go. We already talked about this during the show, but I had pulled this question. Blackbeard at Blackbeard Bets, week 1 starter for the Vikings, Darnold or McCarthy?
It's Darnold, and I don't understand why I'm getting so much pushback. And luckily for me, the tweet didn't go through, and I wasn't trying to be an asshole. I just have not seen one positive thing about JJ McCarthy in camp. I also don't know if JJ was ready right away, regardless of how he's performing. I try not to listen to that stuff too much, but I think it's Darnold. We've seen this team, like, how long did they stick with Dobbs? Like, I think they let Darnold play a little bit, get, McCarthy up to speed. A guy that didn't get touched a lot in college might need a little bit extra time.
According to DraftKings, Sam Darnold is minus 170 right now to start week 1. And JJ
we have odds on it.
Yeah, we have odds on it. And JJ McCarthy is at plus 130. So something
I'd be
to keep in
interested
mind.
to see how that shifts. We'll have to keep an eye on that. But right now on, May 23rd, it's my aunt's birthday. I need to wish her happy birthday. I would go Darnold.
All right, great. Second question. How embarrassed is the LMPD for having Officer Farva doing traffic at Valhalla and starting shit with the #1 golfer in the world? That is from @WildPidge.
Okay. I was going to bring it up Well, Sia was on because he is a golf guy and he also used to be a lawyer. If you watched, like, how do they say it? Louisville, Louis, the S is silent. It's almost as dumb as pronouncing the name. It's just, they made a mockery out of themselves, to act like a cop got pulled along Scotty Scheffler's car. They held a press conference and it was like, oh yeah, we're releasing the video. Then the one lady didn't know what was going on. We're actually not releasing the videos. We'll put them on our YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube. Like, what is going on right now? Then you watch the video. There's nothing incriminating. They admitted they'll never know what exactly happened because the cop didn't have his body cam on. I think at the end of the day, they're just making a spectacle out of this. They're better off dropping the charges. But again, I'm not a lawyer. Scotty Scheffler did not do something, especially he did not assault a cop and he did not commit a felony.
Great. All right. Well, that is Stephie's point of view. Here we go. Oh, wait.
How do you say it? Is it Louisville? How do you say Louis? Is it Louisville or how do you even? I don't even know how to say it.
I don't know. Okay, yeah. I guess those are already questions. But I had this.
Oh,
hi.
Perfect. So this is not real, sadly.
It should be though.
It should be. It should be real. I really like the curl in the front. That's one of my favorite aspects to this hair. I think this also gives very, like, I don't know if you saw the drama where he, I guess, broke things off with his long-term girlfriend and he's dating like an OnlyFans model right now. And that hair is giving, I broke up with my long-term girlfriend and I'm dating an OnlyFans model. Yes. It's also giving over 10.5 wins.
Yeah. It's giving we're gonna beat the Chiefs in week 2 energy right there.
Yeah,
that's how.
And then we're gonna lose the rest of the season.
Then he's gonna get hurt and lose us because he's gonna be too fatigued fucking an OnlyFans model too much.
It's too much. All right, is that the last question? I'll let us get out of here.
That was it.
I don't even know what the Pacers score is. I'll have to check out what's going on after.
Yeah, I haven't been watching because I wanted to start it over.
It'll be a surprise. I can't wait for the surprise after this. Be sure to subscribe. We will be back next Tuesday for golf. Appreciate everyone, and let's win some monies this weekend.
What time next Tuesday? So people know. We've got we've announced new time.
Re-record again because a lot of you guys are busy during the day, and it's fun to have usually a live chat. So if not, it seems like everyone enjoyed that, don't you think? Having it launched.
So what time will the show go live? I guess we should say.
You're the producer, right? It'll go live 4 p.m. Eastern.
4 p.m. Eastern time. There you go. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Watch him make it, break it, break it, break it.